How to Play Rumbel by Link Wray. This is a really cool but really easy tune, so it's ideal for beginners, but also for anyone who just wants to increase their repertoire with easy to remember tunes. If you need or want the tablature that goes with this tune, you can find it at www.ebooksforguitar.com, and it's in the course First Steps Guitar for absolute beginners. And if you don't know how to read tablature yet, that's also in the course. The First Steps Guitar PDF ebook is completely free, and you'll find it in with the fingerstyle guitar course. And I'll put a link to the playlist of all the guitar lessons down below in the description. And if you're not familiar with this tune, I'll put a link to it being played down below in the description as well. Right, let's get into it. How to Play Rumbel by Link Wray. This tune is ideal for beginners because it's only got 4 chords in, and it's got 1 scale. So if you've never actually gone through any scales, this is a great way of being introduced to them. So we'll look at the scale first. The scale is the E minor pentatonic scale. However, before we learn it how we're going to play it in the tune, I'll just quickly show it you as a bar scale, or a scale that doesn't use any open notes. So we'll first take a look at the G minor pentatonic scale. Now, the reason I'm showing you a G minor pentatonic scale first is because this is a really useful scale. Because you're not playing any open strings, you can move it up and down the neck as you need it. Before we learn how to play the G minor pentatonic scale, let's just take a look at the shape. And you'll notice there's 2 notes per string. So as you're playing it, it's more or less like walking across the guitar with your fingers. And you'll notice there's only 3 fingers used. The first finger, the third finger, and the fourth finger. And you'll notice every 3rd fret is played with the first finger, every 5th fret is played with the 3rd finger, and every 6th fret is played with the 4th finger. And this is how you should play all scales or tablature that's based in one position, assigning a finger to each fret. So basically, each fret has its own finger. In this case, the 3rd fret is the first finger, the 4th fret is the 2nd finger, the 5th fret is the 3rd finger, and the 6th fret is the 4th finger. If you learn and practice the guitar this way, the correct way, it'll become habit quite quickly. So you'll be able to speed up and play more accurately, more quickly. Right, I'll show you very slowly how to play this scale. So if you can already play the guitar, you can skip this using the chapters feature because it'll be very boring. But if you're an absolute beginner and you've got your guitar with you, pick it up and get ready to play the G minor pentatonic scale. Firstly, place the first finger on the 3rd fret of the bottom E string and play that. Then place the 4th finger on the 6th fret of the bottom E string and play that. Now move along to the next string and place the first finger in the 3rd fret of the A string and play that. Then place the 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the A string and play that. Move along to the next string and place the first finger in the 3rd fret of the D string and play that. Then press the 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the D string and play that. Go across again to the next string and place the 1st finger in the 3rd fret of the G string and play that. Then put the 3rd finger in the 5th fret of the G string and play that. Moving to the next string, place the 1st finger in the 3rd fret of the B string and play that. Press the 4th finger in the 6th fret of the B string and play that. Now move along again to the last string and place the 1st finger in the 3rd fret of the top E string and play that. And finally, place the 4th finger in the 6th fret of the top E string and play that. And here's how you eventually want that to sound. Now, if you're having trouble stretching between the 1st and the 3rd or 4th fingers, for the time being, you can lift the 1st finger. However, keep trying to play the 3rd and 4th finger notes whilst leaving the 1st finger in place, because this is a really good stretch exercise. And the most common reason people can't do that stretch is because their thumb's in the wrong position. Yes, that's right, the thumb is really important. So you might find if you can't stretch, it's because your thumb is in the wrong position. So bring the thumb round the guitar towards the floor, and this will put your fingers onto their tips and enable a greater stretch. Now, this will feel a little uncomfortable at first, but stick with it, it's well worth it, and you will get used to it. Here's how to play that scale again, just a little bit faster. Firstly, place the 1st finger on the 3rd fret of the bottom E string and play that. Now place the 4th finger on the 6th fret of the bottom E string and play that. Move across to the A string and place the 1st finger on the 3rd fret and play that. Now place the 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the A string and play that. Move across to the D string and place the 1st finger on the 3rd fret and play that. Now place the 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the D string and play that. Move across to the G string and place the 1st finger on the 3rd fret and play that. Now place the 3rd finger on the 5th fret and play that. Next, move across to the B string and put the 1st finger on the 3rd fret again and play that. Now put the 4th finger on the 6th fret and play that. Now move to the top E string and place the 1st finger in the 3rd fret and play that. And now place the 4th finger on the 6th fret and play that. Here that is being played with a metronome at a nice steady 60 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try to play along if you think you're ready, but don't worry if you're not, you can come back to it once you've practiced. And here that is again, for anyone who's playing along. It's a good idea to practice that for a couple of hours until you're fairly happy with it. And when you are fairly happy with it, you want to try reversing it. So you play the scale going up like this. And then you come back down again like this. You can then bring it all together, playing the scale up and then back down again, but only playing the top note once, so it sounds like this. It's well worth memorising that scale and making it part of your practice routine. Because just like chords, scales and parts of scales appear in different tunes, just like the E minor pentatonic scale appears in Rumbel. So if you already know the scales, learning the tunes becomes far easier. Once you feel you can play the scale, we then need to add another dimension to it by introducing the pick hand, and with the plectrum you want to play down, up, down, up, down, up, all the way through the scale. And this will help you get the scale more smoothly and eventually more quickly. Right, let's learn the tune Rumbel by Link Wray. Hopefully, seeing these two scales alongside each other, you can see why I've taught you the G minor pentatonic scale. Because the E minor pentatonic scale is exactly the same thing, but in the open position. However, being in the open position, we don't have to play it with the first, third and fourth finger. We only have to use the second and third fingers. In this tune, you'll only have to play the scale backwards from the top E string to the bottom E string. However, it's important you use alternating plectrum strokes with the pick hand, because eventually you'll have to play it quite quickly. Being played at full speed, it's about 85 beats per minute. However, it's triplet quavers, so you play 3 notes per beat, so it seems a lot quicker. Here's a metronome beat at 60 beats per minute, but with the triplets being played, so you can get used to how it sounds. And I'll count along with alternate bars to help you understand what's going on. 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. Here's the section of the tune where the scale's being played at full speed, including the triplets. Hopefully you noticed that I held the second to last note, which is the 3rd fret on the bottom E string, or the G. Here that is being played more slowly, with a metronome at 60 beats per minute, with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you're ready. And here that is again for anyone who's playing along. Anyone who's just learnt this scale, it might take you a few weeks to get up to this speed, so don't worry if you can't play it that fast straight away. To answer a couple of questions that I know will come up before you ask them. The first one is, why do we play the scale with the second and third finger and not the first and second finger? And the reason for this is that most people find it easier to go from the chords and back to the chords from the scale being played with the second and the third finger. Another question I get asked is it important to play the down-up downstroke with the plectrum? Can you not do an up-down upstroke? And the answer to that is yes, you can start in whichever direction you prefer as long as you alternate the plectrum directions. Looking back to the tablature for the whole tune, you'll notice we play the rundown of this scale 4 times, and that's without repeats, so we have to do it quite a lot. And you'll notice that there's a symbol between the 3 and the 0 at the end of the scale rundown. This symbol is a bend up and release, and to play this, we'd pluck the 3rd fret on the bottom E string. Then we'd bend the string by half a tone and release it back, and then play the open string. So it sounds like this. You'll notice I'm bending the note upwards towards the top of the guitar rather than downwards. And there's a reason for this. Some people will find it easier to bend downwards. However, if you do this, you're in danger of bending the string so it flicks off the end of the frets, which won't sound very good. So, to avoid this, as a general rule, you always bend the string towards the centre of the neck. Here's what that passage sounds like with the bend, and I'll play it at full speed first, just so you can hear how it sounds. Here that is again, but slowed down to 60 beats per minute, and with a 2-bar introduction, in case you want to try and play along. And here that is again one last time. If you find you still can't play that, don't worry about it. Just keep practicing it and then bring it together with the rest of the tune when you're ready. Right, let's move on to the chords now. And there's only 4 chords, and 3 of them are really easy. And arguably, the chords are the most iconic and recognisable parts of this tune. So if you're an absolute beginner and you struggle playing the single note sections, you should be able to play the main riff. To make this section more easy to learn, I'll be using the easy notation. If you've got the PDF that doesn't have the easy notation in, then you might want to re-download the PDF because this is in the latest version. And to know which version you've got, you've just got to look down at the copyright notice at the bottom of the page. If your copyright is before 2025, then you've got an older version of the PDF. Right, I'll go through each chord from the point of view of an absolute beginner, starting with the D sus2. And if you already play a D chord, all you have to do to create this chord is to lift the second finger up, so it exposes the top E string. And you're only playing the top 4 strings. However, to make the chord changes more easy, it's probably better to play this chord using the second finger on the 2nd fret of the G string and the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. So, in summary, to play this chord, you place the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string and the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string and strum the top 4 strings. And for the sake of this tune, every time you play the D sus2, you play it twice, strumming down. The next chord is the E, or to give it its full name, E major. And this is played by placing your 1st finger on the 1st fret of the G string, placing your 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and place the 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and strum all the strings. Here that is again, the 1st finger on the 1st fret of the G string, the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, and the 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and strum all the strings. If you've got wider fingers or you're looking for a shortcut, you can actually play this chord with 2 fingers. The 1st finger on the 1st fret of the G string, and the 2nd finger straddles between the 2nd fret of the A string and the D string. This method isn't for everyone, but I'm putting it out there for anyone who might find it useful. So, to play the main riff of the tune, we play the D sus2 twice, and then the E major, all down strums. You'll notice that we don't start this tune on the 1st beat of the bar, we start it on the 3rd beat of the bar. So to listen to that again, we've got 1 bar which is the intro, and then we play 1, 2, D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And this rhythm continues throughout the tune. So here it is being played with a bar introduction at a very slow 60 beats per minute, but I'll be counting over it the first time, so just listen to it. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Here that is once more with the bar introduction. I'm not going to count over it this time. See if you can play along. Here that is again one last time. Try and play along with it if you think you're ready. Because this main riff is repeated so many times, just by getting that small 2-chord movement, you can play over half of the tune. Let's move on to the next chord movement now, which involves the D sus2 again, but this time introduces the A, or to give it its full name, the A major. And this again can be played two ways. Either you can play it by placing the first finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, and the 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the B string. And you strum the top 5 strings, ignoring the bottom E string. Or, if you've got wider fingers, you can place the 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, overlapping onto the G string, so you cover the 2 strings, and place the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the B string. And then again, you'd strum the top 5 strings, ignoring the bottom E string. Whichever way you choose to play this chord, stick with it, as trying to learn it 2 different ways will only split your practice time. And most people probably already know this chord, as it's one of the first chords you learn. Within the context of this tune, we play exactly the same rhythm as we did for the D sus2 and the E major, but this time we replace the E major with the A major. Here's what that sounds like at a very slow 60 beats per minute with a bar introduction. And here that is again, in case you want to try and play along. And here that is again, one last time. Right, let's move on to the last 2 chords now, which are the D sus2 once again. However, this time we're introducing a B7th, which, in my opinion, is the hardest of the 4 chords. So let's take a look at how to play that first. To play the B7th, firstly you place the 1st finger on the 1st fret of the D string, then you place the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the A string. Then you place the 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. And finally, you place the 4th finger on the 2nd fret of the top E string. And now, once again, strum the top 5 strings, ignoring the bottom E string. Let's do that again. So take your hand off the guitar and then place the fingers back. Firstly, the 1st finger on the 1st fret of the D string, then the 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the A string, then the 3rd finger on the 2nd fret of the G string, and finally the 4th finger on the 2nd fret of the top E string. And now strum the top 5 strings, ignoring the bottom E string. Now, playing this chord on its own with lots of time is one thing. However, within the context of the tune, you have to change from the D sus2 to the B7th quite quickly. So this will take some practice. However, there's a slight difference in the way that you play this chord that you might find quite useful. If you look at it in the tablature, what's happening here is the bass note is played first before the rest of the chord is strummed. So, if you can put the bass note down first and play that, whilst putting the other fingers into place. So it looks and sounds something like this. If you can do this, it's really helpful and makes it easier to do the chord change within the time frame expected. Here's what the chord change sounds like between the D sus2 and the B7th, with a bar introduction at a slow 60 beats per minute. And here that is again, but this time try and play along if you think you're ready. But if not, don't worry about it, just practice it for a while. And here that is one last time for anyone who's trying to play along. At one place in the tune, but only once, the B7 appears like this. And this is a rake. And you can find this in other tab looking like this. And a rake is where you slowly drag or rake the plectrum across the strings. So it sounds something like this. The speed you rake a chord at really depends on the feel of the tune you're playing, and it can vary quite a lot. In the context of this tune, you play the bass first and then rake the rest of the chord, so it sounds like this. I don't need to say much about this because it's quite easy and most people can do it straight away. But if you do struggle with it, you could play the B7 as you've played the other B7s and nobody would really notice. Now, if you're having difficulty with any of the chord changes in this tune, the best way to practice them is just to do what I call chord push-ups, and that's where you just go between the two chords you're having difficulty with, and do this starting really slowly and speed up. And doing it this way, you can make 5 minutes of practice time worth the equivalent of a whole hour if you were practicing the whole tune. Here's a demonstration of how that looks between the D sus2 and the B7. Now you've learnt the entire tune except for one small section, and that's the guitar solo. As this tune is in the Absolute Beginners course, and I'm teaching this to an absolute beginner, I wouldn't bother with the solo. However, here it is anyway, for anyone who's a bit more advanced yet still watching this video, or if you are an absolute beginner and you just want to see if you can do it. The first two notes you'll notice is two 12s with two lines leading up to the 12 with an SL above them. And this means you slide to the 12s. But you don't slide from any specific note. It's a ghost note, which means you're playing something but you're not really hearing it. You play both the 12s and the slides with either the first finger or the third finger, depending on which you're most comfortable with. Personally, I prefer to use the third finger because it makes it easier to end the solo on the A. You can see I'm sliding from the 11th fret, but you don't necessarily hear the 11th fret, as you pluck the guitar just as you start the slide. The entire solo is in triplets again. So for every 4 beats, you're playing 12. Or for every beat, you're playing 3. However, if you're an absolute beginner, I would just try doing tremolo picking, which is basically going down, up, down as fast as you can, and you're playing the top 2 strings on the 12th fret. For this entire tune, we've been playing an off-bar rhythm, or in other words, we've been playing the 3rd beat of the bar as the 1st beat of the bar. And this becomes particularly relevant here, because you'll see you do a slide, then play 4 beats, then another slide, play 4 beats, and another slide, and 4 beats. So you're doing 3 bars of the slide with 12 notes in triplets. And then for the final virtual bar of the solo, you're playing a slide for every beat of the bar, with 2 added notes between the slides, which are the triplets. Here's what that looks and sounds like at a nice slow 60 beats per minute with a bar introduction. And this isn't the hardest part of the solo. That's where you have to return to the A at the end of the solo, coming straight from the 12th fret. However, you don't have to play the complete A, you miss the top E string. Or if you prefer, you can even play an A5, where you only have to play 3 strings. Here's the entire solo being played at a nice slow 60 beats per minute with a bar introduction, so you can hear and see how it should be played. To make this A possible, we don't play the complete A. We miss the top E string and play the A with just one finger. And here's how. Firstly, you place the first finger in the second fret of the D string. Then you lay it down across the G and the B string. And then you strum the middle 4 strings. So it sounds like this. Here that is again. Place the first finger in the second fret of the D string and lay it down so it's covering the G and the B string, and then play the 4 middle strings. Here's the complete solo ending on the A with a bar introduction at 60 beats per minute. And here that is again, one last time. As I said earlier, if you struggle with the A, you can play an A5. To play this then, you'd put your first finger on the D string in the second fret and allow it to fall down onto the G string in the second fret. And then you just play 3 strings, the A, the D and the G. You've now learnt all the components that make up the tune Rumbel by Link Wray. You've just got to practice those now and speed them up and then bring them together. When you're ready, you could try playing along with the backing track that I'll put at the end of this video, both at a slow speed and at the regular speed. If you want or need the tablature for this lesson, you'll find it in the GCH Guitar Academy First Steps guitar course, and that's available free at www.ebooks4guitar.com. And if you've already got that tablature, make sure you re-download it to get the updates. Thank you very much for watching, and a real special thanks for watching to the end. And if you enjoyed the lesson and haven't done already, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new lessons. And if you'd like to support the channel financially, there's channel membership available. And I'd like to thank sincerely everyone who has become a channel member, because only by your support can the channel keep going. Bye for now, until the next time.